Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon, and with me, as always, is Caleb, and we are going to be wrapping up Mad Max month with Mad Max Fury Road. But before we get to that, we do like we always do. And Caleb, have you been watching anything interesting?
Not really this week because I watched the movie we're going to talk about twice. So that took up
Rock?
4 hours of my viewing time. Did watch some Bob's Burgers, so I mean there's that, I guess. And then a little bit more time was put into the Mad Max video game, which I don't know all the details because I haven't made the connections, but I've been told that there are quite a few connections with the Mad Max video game and Fury Road as well as Furiosa. So
Rock?
it's kind of like all encompassing in there and everything. So
Nice.
um yeah, kind of interesting. And speaking of Furiosa, might be talking about that briefly at the end of the episode. So
Rock?
um stay stay tuned for that part. But what do you have this week, Brandon?
Oh, pretty much the same stuff I've been watching for a while. We watched a couple episodes of Grey's Anatomy. King of the Hill, watched an episode of that, watched an episode of Degrassi Junior High. I started watching this new series that Vice has called Uninterrupted Real Stories of Basketball.
Okay.
And it's kind of like, oh, like episode one they did about, it said it was supposed to be about Sean Kemp, but it was really more about like, um, the early to mid 90s, Seattle Supersonics.
Okay.
So like they talked to Sean Kemp, they talked to Gary Payton, they talked to Detlef Schrempf and like the coach and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty good. Um, Episode two is about Pete Maravich,
Oh,
so that's
nice.
pretty good. Kind of like, you know, the crazy training he went through and how devoted he was, and how ahead of his time he was, and then like his early death and all that. And then episode three was actually really interesting, and you should check it out. It was all about NBA Jam
Oh, nice.
and like how it was like a handful of guys that created it as like something for fun, and or they had like the idea of it, and then the company they worked for got bought out by Midway, who made Mortal Kombat, and they kind of just like took off from there, and how they had to really fight to get the NBA license and get like player likenesses and stuff in there. And then, dude, NBA Jam sold or made so much freaking money in the arcade.
Hmm.
I think they said like, don't quote me, I think it was like Mortal Kombat was super popular back at the like 1993 or whatever, and it made, I think they said in a month, or no, maybe it was in a year, it made like a couple $1 million. But like NBA Jam made almost $1 billion the first year
Oh my
in just
gosh.
like arcade money. Is how popular it was. Yeah, and it showed like behind the scenes, like setting it up. And I didn't realize that one of the dudes that created the game was from Bay City, Michigan.
What?
Yeah, and he put in a code that if you're using the Chicago Bulls and you're playing against the Pistons and you're down by like two and you go to shoot a three-pointer or something, if you try to either tie the game or win the game, you'll miss the shot every single time.
If you're playing as Detroit
If you're playing as the Bulls against
against
the
Detroit.
Pistons, so the Bulls will never beat the Pistons if it's a close game.
Oh my gosh, that's
And he put
hilarious.
because the other guys that he worked with at Midway were from Chicago. And no, he put that code in there and he kept silent about it. And then like no one even noticed it until like 30 years after the game came out.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. But it was really interesting. So if you're like into video games and stuff, you guys should check that out. Um, I think there's a new episode coming out. I don't remember. I know they're supposed to have one about Bill Lambier, which will be kind of interesting, but I don't know if that was the latest one or not. I also watched the latest episode of Who Killed WCW. I think there's one or two more of those coming out, so that'll be interesting. And then the last thing I watched was this Hulu um, limited series. It's called Perfect Wife: The Mysterious Disappearance of Sherry Papini. A Sherry Papini. But it's
Poppity
like
boopie?
this woman, um, she's married, has a couple kids, and one day, like, she gets she just disappears, and like her husband finds her phone like smashed down the road, and then she's gone for like almost an entire month. And then one day she's found running down the highway with chains on her, and like she's all beat up and everything. And she says she was abducted by like two Mexican women in a dark SUV. But then like her story doesn't really add up, and then they have to do like this big investigation, and it's just like kind of crazy everything that happened. So I won't ruin that, but check that out. That was pretty interesting. I think it's like 3 or 4 episodes.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. Um my work's been crazy. I haven't had a whole heck of a lot of time to watch anything, but that's what I've got.
What is wrong with you?
So I did watch Mad Max Fury Road. So
Did you
let's
watch it
talk
twice?
about that. Not in one week.
Come on, yeah, commit, man.
All right, let's do it. Mad Max Fury Road is from 2015, is directed by George Miller. The plot is in a post apocalyptic wasteland, a woman rebels against a tyrannical ruler in search for her homeland with the aid of a group of female prisoners, a psychotic worshiper, and a drifter named Max. The cast, we got Tom Hardy as Max, Charlize Theron as Furiosa, Nicholas Hoult as Nux, Zoe Kravitz, I'm sorry, as Toast, Hugh Keys Byrne as Morton Joe, Josh Hellman as Slit, Nathan Jones as Rictus Erectus, Rose Huntington Whiteley as Splendid. I know this is one of your favorite movies, and I think this is the second time I watched this.
Yep, that's right. And so I watched this movie twice over the weekend.
Rock,
So pretty ready and good to talk about it.
rock.
And yeah, been looking forward to this one.
I remember liking it a lot the first time, so I was um looking forward to it as well.
Yeah,
Uh, I honestly forgot that Nathan Jones is in this. Um, Nathan Jones was a former wrestler, actually.
oh yeah, I figured he was somewhere in that circle.
Yeah, back in the early 2000s. Um, I remember they hyped him up like crazy with because apparently like he was in an Australian prison at one point,
Okay.
and they called him the Colossus of Bago Road or something like that. And they're like, "Oh, this is gonna be like this big dude, and he's gonna be like mean and nasty." And then for some reason they bring him in, and he's like a good guy, and he was supposed to tag team with the Undertaker at WrestleMania.
Hmm.
It was gonna be the Undertaker and Nathan Jones against the Big Show and Albert.
Okay.
And it got closer and closer to the show, and then all of a sudden, like they had like a story going, oh, he got jumped or whatever, so he wasn't going to be able to wrestle, and then he came in like at the end and like with a run in and sort of like kicking guys and stuff. But the real story was that he was so terrible
Oh no.
that they couldn't put him in the match.
No.
Yeah, he was a big, scary looking dude, but he like couldn't wrestle worth a crap. And I'm like, you know, you're bad if you can't hold your own like and just just passable when you're tagging with the Undertaker who wrestled for like almost 40 years
Man.
and you're going against the Big Show and Albert who were like long time wrestlers and knew what they were doing. Like I can't even imagine how bad the dude was,
Man, how intimidating would that be though?
right? And it was at WrestleMania, it was his debut, so even then, but and he bounced back and forth every once in a while
Hmm.
for a few years, and then They went on like a tour of Australia and he just didn't come back. He stayed in Australia.
Uh, oof.
Now he's an actor,
Yeah.
and he's a better actor than he was a wrestler, so that's good.
Yeah, speaking of acting, man, good job all around. Great casting, great acting. Just
Yeah, for
now
sure.
in that circle, I do have to say, I've never really heard of anything in the past. So I don't know how deep it goes, but I have heard that working with George Miller as a director is very intense and grueling.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've taken from the other Mad Max movies and some of the facts and stuff about long work days and
Yeah, like I have not heard a lot of details about the early ones, but Fury Road and Furiosa,
hmm
um a lot of stuff, especially from the female actresses, about how grueling it could be, and then also actors and actresses not getting along because of the conditions and kind of how things
yeah.
go and everything. And then it's not until after filming is concluded and everything that they can make peace with each other because it's just so stressful. So not
Yeah, I've
and
read that too. Yeah, I heard that also like Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy did not get along very well
hmm
in the making of this movie, which I don't know. I thought they had pretty good chemistry like in the movie towards the end. So they were
yeah,
able to put that aside, but
I think I
and she was
heard.
great in this movie.
Oh yeah, well they all were great.
hmm
And I heard, and I don't know if this was legit, but I heard that they kind of like mended things or kind of rebounded from their um the friction
Issues.
in their relationship and issues, yeah, and their
hmm
business relationship and all that. But yeah, and so I heard similar things with Furiosa as well. So nothing against George Miller because I don't know if it's just people trying to save face, but they do all say that George Miller is fantastic and is a master of his profession.
Right.
But yeah, I mean that still doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. So just kind of interesting. I mean, I've not really gone in depth and checked it out and studied it and everything. I mean, as much as I love this movie, as much as I love this franchise and everything, um, those kind of details don't, I don't know, don't really stand out to me, and I don't really like study those facets of things. But that's what I've heard.
Yeah, I was just kind of surprised that George Miller directed every single one of these movies.
Yeah, that was uh that was impressive. So, and it did a good job with keeping the continuity with everything.
hmm
So, I mean, kudos to him. I mean, also in the line of actors too. I'm sure anyone who really kind of knows much about this series or has watched more than just Fury Road has heard the detail that Immortan Joe is also the same guy from the original Mad Max who
Toe
was
Cutter.
Toe Cutter.
Yep.
Yeah. That's one of the most popular things that I hear that people know, which is pretty awesome. I mean, so I'm going to talk about some things. I may have talked about them in the previous episodes. If I repeat myself, I kind of do apologize because I've had a lot of conversations about this recently because Furiosa's out. So people have been talking about that. I talk about it with my coworkers and everything. So I can't remember exactly what conversations I've had on the podcast and which ones I haven't.
hmm
Um, but yeah, the continuity and then the ability to use that actor um twice as villains was a really cool concept to me, especially from the aspect that Immortan Joe, you don't really see his face enough that you would be like, oh my gosh, why are you using the same guy from the other movie?
Oh yeah, well he's older He's
Mm,
got heavy makeup and a mask on, so that
yeah.
worked pretty well.
Hmm. So, I
I
mean,
will say that this movie, um, more than the others, is just like nonstop action.
it's so interesting because that's how I always remember it. Is like
Hmm.
it's just nonstop. But in reality, it does have its moments where it's not action, but so much of it is um just very brief supporting content
Yep.
that you feel like it doesn't stop. I mean, the longest period of time where things kind of slow down is when they finally um get some distance between them and the um war boys and Morton Joe and the war parties. There we go. That's a good
Hmm.
term to say. And they get past the swamp and the bog, and then they travel through the wasteland a little bit further, and then they meet up with the many mothers, and then you have that whole kind of debate on what to do. So that section right there is like the slowest part of the movie.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to, I forgot both times actually. I really kind of wanted to time that because honestly, like it's not, it's a fair amount of time, but it's not very long. But it also just kind of gives you a little bit of a breather before the finale, I guess you would say, the
Yeah.
climax. And so it just, all of it just works together so well. Like there are some movies that I feel like you can just say this is cinema, and also a good comparison is it's just like a symphony. Like everything is orchestrated and it has to go off at the right time. Otherwise, if someone is a beat ahead or a beat behind, it's completely like it completely ruins it. And this thing from start to finish just works together so well. Like I find myself kind of hating saying some things like that just because I feel like I'm not saying anything wrong with this movie, but it's just so many good things.
Right. Yeah, I get that. Um, and I really couldn't think of anything bad with this movie.
Mhm.
I mean, the whole genre itself is not like 100% my thing, but I thought this movie was really entertaining. And like you talked about, there's really not much downtime, and really the whole movie is like one big car chase.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Now, here's kind of an interesting thing, and this is kind of what I brought up earlier, where it's just like we may have had this conversation, we may have not. Um,
Hmm.
but after watching this, so watching the first three original Mad Max movies, watching this one, I don't know if there's ever been a I'm fairly certain that there's probably somebody else who's had this conversation, but I almost feel like the theme of everything with these movies, I kind of wish that they would have been more so just labeled like the Road Warrior movies,
Hmm.
because it really almost feels like you have this universe that they created, which is, post-apocalyptic, the wasteland. And then these are just stories that people have, because they talk about, the history men and the history people, and they like keep trying to keep track of stories by passing them down and everything because they don't have other ways to document them at this time.
Yeah.
That these situations and stories, these movies essentially are stories, and they currently are set up as Mad Max stories. But in my mind, I almost want to believe it more so as the idea of these are just stories of random wanderers in the wilderness
Yeah.
that have essentially become heroes, and they just always refer to them as the road warrior, and it doesn't necessarily always mean that's the same guy.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So, I mean, I know maybe I'm kind of like making something out of nothing, but I almost feel like they could keep. Well, obviously, I mean, the possibilities with this whole thing are endless. They just did Furiosa. I have my own take on that whole thing, which I'll talk about at a different time. But just that aspect of it's just like take any concept, some lone wastelander comes in and I don't necessarily want to say saves the day. It's really kind of interesting because with the way that they approached in this movie, I feel they did a really good job keeping it consistent with the other movies where most of the time like Max is just trying to survive. Like he doesn't really care about anybody else. He doesn't want to get involved with anybody else. He just does what he needs to do. Like
Yeah.
in Mad Max 2, when with that whole little gas colony or whatever,
Hmm.
he didn't want to get involved until he saw an opportunity where it's like, hey, I'm going to do something for you. Then you give me my gas and then I'm going to get out of here.
Yeah.
And so it's not like he wanted to get involved where he's like, oh, I feel bad for you. So I want to help you out. It's just like, hey, I see that you can help me. And so I'm going to do something for you so that I can get what I need. And that goes throughout this whole thing. Like, even the same thing, they actually did a really excellent job with the progression and storytelling with this one compared to the other ones, where you saw that Max was totally all about himself, all about survival and everything. And when he had the opportunity to try to escape and abandon the other people, he didn't care. He was just like, hey, I'm taking care of myself. You've got your own problems. You deal with it. But then it
Right.
slowly, steadily grew where he was. I wouldn't say he really got super attached or anything, but then he just recognized like, hey, I can do something here. I don't care completely about myself. Like I'm not going to kill these people and abandon them. I think one of the greatest moments was when they were in the bog and they were fixing the truck, the rig, and he went
Hmm.
off by himself and he was going after the people chasing him.
Yeah.
And they were just like, well, what happens if you don't come back by the time we have the truck fixed? He's just like, well, then you just keep going. So saw the transition and it kind of slowly, steadily grew as things went because he was very focused on himself and then he started helping out with Furiosa and the girls a little bit and then he got more involved and then he completely like put himself in the line of danger and was just like you guys do what you need to do. It was just very interesting because you saw that progression. I
Hmm.
think the best in this movie out of all the Mad Max movies.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, by definition, he's a drifter, so he's really more of a loner. But
Hmm.
you get to see like some of the change more in this one than you do in other ones. Um, and kind of what you were saying with how you almost see this as like just the Road Warrior movies more than like a Mad Max movie.
Hmm.
Um, Also, you have to think about too that the second movie, it, I mean, it feels like it's in the same universe, but it's a much different feeling movie. And I feel like the third one was kind of about the same, and then this one's similar as well, where it's more about the super elaborate vehicles and chases and like the crazy looking characters and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And it almost reminds me of how like this became more of like the Road Warrior series, and then not as many people like talk about the first one, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of like Friday the 13th, where it was like Mrs. Voorhees is in the first one, but now they're just known as like the Jason movies, but he didn't come around to the second one.
Hmm.
And that was
Yeah.
kind of like the natural progression where it became like, okay, this is what a Friday the 13th movie feels like.
Hmm. Well, yeah, like you could technically say like the first movie is obviously Mad Max, and then after that it's The Road Warrior, and then it's Beyond Thunderdome, which is like Road Warrior Part Two, and so on and so forth from there. Because yeah, I mean, even though there was still plenty of driving in the first one, I totally agree with you. That's the one that kind of sticks out the most.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think we kind of covered that before, where it's just like chances are it's mostly based on they did what they could with the budget and resources they had at the time.
Yeah.
And so they just couldn't quite create that post-apocalyptic world like they wanted to.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, just great stuff. It all led up to this one and was just super awesome to see where it's just like they slowly grew it from the first movie to the second movie. The second and the movie and the third movie were relatively kind of similar. I mean, they took it up a notch with the third one a bit, just with the sets and everything. Um, but they really, I think to me, Fury Road is the encapsulation of what the Mad Max saga is and how they set it up. I won't get into it too much, but actually, I wound up playing more of the game over the past couple weeks while we've been doing this series,
Okay.
and the game is fantastic. It's really clunky controller wise, but I mean, if you like the movies, you're probably going to really like the game. But it just really sets up because I also have a little bit of context because I saw Furiosa. The
Right.
the previous Mad Max movies, the original Mad Max movies, let's put it that way, especially the second one and the third one, were very like self-contained. Like, okay, we're gonna work with this little encampment out in the middle of the wilderness, and then the third one was like, okay, we're gonna work with Bartertown, and it's basically
Hmm.
all gonna be Bartertown. But in Fury Road, even though you don't go all the places, like you see the world grow, the wasteland grow because you have the Citadel, you have the Bullet Farm, you have crap, what's the last one? Gastown. And they just like grow and show like this is what the world has become, this post-apocalyptic world, by creating these
Hmm.
settlements. And it was their biggest and most ambitious kind of project because they were not just so focused on one central area, which I think was a nice like progression and step up with the series as a whole, on being like, hey, it's not just the Citadel. There's actually kind of like a world and a network system where people work and trade together, not just like in one town, but like across the system and network. So, um, yeah, just very different and very much advanced from and in depth since the first one or even the second one, where it's like more time has passed, and so the wasteland has grown even more and
Hmm.
evolved even more.
Yeah, it does a really good job of like defining a world that it belongs in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I just had like an idea. So you get like the original Mad Max and the Road Warrior are kind of similar in the style of like if you're talking about the Rambo series,
Okay.
where it's like First Blood is more of like a serious movie. Um, and like the first Mad Max movie is a serious movie that's more dramatic
Yeah.
and has like action elements in it and like lots of action scenes, but it's like a deeper movie. And like the
Yeah.
second one kind of goes at that too. But then you get Rambo 2. And Rambo 2 is just like, let's do over the top action and crazy, like, let's personify the 80s. And that's kind of what Beyond Thunderdome was.
Yeah.
And, you could throw Rambo 3 into that too. But then by the time they came out with Rambo 4, they took a more serious approach and went like crazy special effects and stuff, which is what Fury Road did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a fair comparison because yeah, like well, a lot of people forget that the first movie is not called Rambo, it's just called First Blood.
Yeah.
And then that is very true where it's just very serious. It's more drama over action, and that's the same thing with the first Mad Max one. And both series just really kind of leaned into it after the first movie, getting more and more into kind of like what they specialized in then. Um,
Yeah, like the first our first blood was a movie that was trying to say something.
mhm.
It had like more of a message behind it. And then like Rambo 2 came out and it was just like Murica.
Yeah. Action. Yeah. Muscles. Explosions.
Machine guns, close-ups of him firing machine guns with muscles.
Well, then also, I mean, yeah, like the comparison then with the Mad Max series is just like serious drama, kind of a message of like, you know, what the world could come to and things like that. I don't know how serious, if he was trying to, George Miller was really trying to send a message with it or not, or if he was just trying to make it more dramatic. But then after that, they really leaned into the whole like glamour, if you can call it that, of the wasteland, where it's just like you get some of those, like everybody just kind of started leaning wildly into um, personalities.
Yeah, world building and um yeah, big personality like villain with humongous.
Mm-hmm. And like the like flashy, flamboyant, um, in your face, just making it unique and giving it a kind of an identity that's held true ever since the second movie. I mean, even the so it, again, because of budget and different things, I think they would have gone for that in the first movie. Things more flashy and more kind of like more unique outfits than
Hmm.
what they really had. But yeah, at the second one, they really went into that. And honestly, I would kind of wonder how people would have thought and reacted to it when the movies originally came out, to go from that first one to the second one. Kind of the same wonder with the Rambo movies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I would feel if I was, you know, let's say in my 20s and I saw First Blood and then they announced the second movie and then it came out and I watched it and in the theater and I was just like, what the heck am I watching? No.
You would have loved it.
Oh, yeah, I would have loved it, but would it have caught me off guard
Yeah.
and made me confused more than anything?
Hmm.
So, but no, just totally interesting concept. So,
Yeah. Um talking about building characters and stuff, I feel like this movie did a pretty good job building characters. Even with all the what do they call them? War boys?
mhm.
They all look like Quan Chi from Mortal Kombat. Bald, super pale skin, around the eyes kind of thing. But they
Yeah.
took a lot of time to like build out uh Nux,
Yeah.
who ended up helping him at the end. Um, and Slit was the other one.
Mhm. Well, that's the thing that's so fantastic is that, and I feel like this is something that could be good and used in comparison with kind of horror movies, is that they usually try to throw so much at you. You know, like they want to entertain you with, you know, scary stuff and kills and all that kind of stuff. And in this movie, they wanted to entertain you with action upon action upon action. But still, throughout this entire movie, they were able to develop the characters.
Yeah.
Like you knew them, you understood them, and you cared.
Hmm.
And they didn't stop the movie to explain any of it. Like it just kept going, and then they did that progression, they did that character development, and it's seamless. and you don't even realize it's happening until you get to the end of the movie and you're like, oh wow, like I totally know and understand what they're going through and I'm rooting for them. And I know and have a better understanding of what this character went through, and I can understand why they thought this and why they chose to do this. But they don't, where so many movies fall into um that rut of trying to over explain things. And this
Yeah.
movie is just so simplistic. It's so crazy to me to think about because there's so much with this movie, but at the same time, I feel like it's almost a minimalist movie because I mean, it's just for the most part, they're chasing each other in the cars the whole movie.
Yeah, and there's not a crazy amount of dialogue in it either.
Exactly. Like there's not a ton of dialogue. So there's not like, um, I mean, there's just not that much conversation going on back and forth. And it's almost like every single piece of, I mean, of course, like I know that that's what they do in editing, but like every single piece of dialogue has a purpose and has substance to it, even with how little somebody may have said. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, for instance, I kind of think about how after Max got captured at the beginning, throughout the whole thing, he talks about how they took all his stuff and he's like, that's my jacket, that's my car, that like this is mine too. Like, and
Hmm.
it it's not super important, but it keeps driving back that whole thing on being like they took everything from him and all he really needs and wants is his stuff and then he can be on his way. And it just like it's not without thought. Everything was done with a specific thought and it held weight, which added to the magnitude of the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, it's really a movie that didn't need very much dialogue, and I mean that was kind of the plan from what I've read in it. Um, I got some more stuff and trivia facts about that, so I won't go on too long about it. But it's really a movie that's centered around like the world that it creates,
Mm,
the characters that it builds, even, like we said, without too much dialogue, but it makes you care about them, and I think that's like really the strongest part of the movie.
yeah.
Other than the nonstop action, which I mean is, it's great as well. Um, and I really can't think of another movie that's like it's really all just one long car chase. Like I
Right.
can't think of any other movie that's like that. That didn't really dawn on me until
Oh,
after I was done
wait,
watching it.
what's your was it the Spielberg movie or what was the
Oh, Duel?
Duel? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Another
Which
one
that's a
that's
great movie. I might have to add that to the list sometime because it's been a long time since I've seen it.
yeah, I haven't seen it, but I remember you talk about it pretty frequently. The other one, definitely not on the same level and genre of this, but just as far as like a movie that's focused primarily on driving. Um, first of all, just as a joke, Speed. Um, but what was the Joyride?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's kind of like
So
Duel,
yeah, I
Joyride.
was kind of wondering if that was kind of like in the same ballpark there, but
We should
yeah,
just do
no.
like car chase movie month where we do like Duel, Joyride, Speed, and my gosh, I had it for a second, then lost it. I don't remember now. Oh, Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Just one long car chase movies. But this would be roped right in with that. Um, I guess some other things too that I really enjoyed in it. I like the big ridiculous vehicle with all the speakers on it, the dude playing guitar in the front of it. That is just it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, how economical is that? We're just gonna have a vehicle driving so that we can play music. What?
You're right. Yeah. In this dystopian land, iPods don't exist.
Yeah. Now I will say that that does kind of get to a thing for me on one thing that when I stop and I think about just kind of is in the realm of like, okay, I know like this doesn't really work and make sense. And that is um how the vehicles could catch up to them so easily, but then they could never get past them.
Yeah.
Like that's doesn't make sense. Like let's say
Yeah.
like if the cars can go 80 miles an hour, I'm just like throwing out random numbers here. Let's say 100 miles per hour. And then the big rig truck is going 80 miles an hour and the cars catch up to them. Why can't they keep going 100 miles per hour and get in front of the rig?
And cut them off.
Yeah, and like cut them off and
Yeah.
like do a blockade or something.
Yeah. I
So
wondered that too.
I mean, I nitpicky. Like it doesn't bother me because a lot of the times they were kind of explaining it where, like, for instance, like a lot, in several instances when they eventually caught up to them, it was that very specific like landscape structure where they couldn't really do a whole lot. But I think the biggest part that where it did bother me was when they were on their way back to the Citadel and they were harpooning the gun and trying to drag and slow it down. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, okay, I'm pretty sure that would get it pretty slow and they would probably like surround that thing in 2 seconds.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So again, I mean, my new like really not important, but I mean, if you want me to criticize and be critical of this movie, that would be like at least one of the things I would say.
uh so an idea I just had. Um so they got this guy standing on the vehicle playing a guitar. What if he wasn't very good? What if it's like, dude, stop playing Smoke on the Water? But it's the only thing I know how to play.
Oh my gosh.
Or he
No.
plays Hot Cross Buns or something over and over.
Oh, dude, that totally makes me think of have you seen Almost Heroes?
Yes.
Where there was the guy who's I think he was playing the banjo or something, or I don't know what he was playing some kind of an instrument. No, maybe it was the fiddle.
Yeah.
And then he kept playing the same song over and over again, and they're like, "For the love of God, please play something different." And then this one guy on with them in the expedition was just like, "Oh, hey, yeah, what was the song you were playing this morning? Why don't you play that one?" And then he goes back to playing the exact same song. So just imagine if that guitar guy was playing the same song over and over again.
Uh, right. Oh gosh. Yeah, Almost Heroes is a great movie, and it's crazy to think that the two main characters are now dead.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah. We might have to do a Chris Farley month too.
Oh yeah. I think we've talked about that.
Yeah, I
So
think so. We have lots of plans and little time to do it, but there you go.
hey, we're almost was this is technically season 6. So I mean, hey, 6 more seasons, we can fit a lot more in, right?
Yeah, that's true. Oh man. Um, oh the so some of the special effects in this, I know that most of them were practical.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the CGI was a little rough at times, but I don't know. I mean, it's a crazy over the top action movie, so I kind of give it a pass. Some of the scenes were a little crazy, like the sandstorm scene.
Yeah.
That was right at the beginning.
Yeah, that was so early.
Yeah, like well, it starts off and Max is like um tied to the front of a car, and they're like driving with him, and he's got that weird mask on.
Mm-hmm.
Because before that, like they tried to brand him, and he tried to get away from it. And they captured him, dragged him back. But yeah, it's like this movie's like go right from the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Which I mean, I guess the Road Warrior was kind of that way too.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about
I
that too.
like when action movies start off and it's like you're right in the middle of like something going on.
Yeah.
That's always great. Lethal Weapon was good at that too,
Mm-hmm.
especially the second one. Like they had that car chase and Murtaugh's car.
Yeah.
But
Actually, a quick note on that. I am a little disappointed that they couldn't get Mel Gibson to do a cameo.
right,
Like just
yeah,
some little simple thing, even if it was like out of the corner or something, you like see him and, you know,
he walks in. Hey guys, that's it.
Murtaugh.
Uh, Ray, oh, you brought Danny Glover with you, okay? But they're both dressed like Briggs and Birds. That's their cameo, as they just walk out of the wrong set.
Yeah.
Gosh.
To say something about the sandstorm is one of my favorite, I don't know if I would say scenes, but clips.
Hmm.
I actually did a little bit of mashup and it was on TikTok until it got taken down because of
Oh yeah.
muted. I think it just got muted actually because of the audio or whatever. But that opening sequence of the sandstorm when um Mad Max, it's just Mad Max and Nux on the car, so Slit has fallen off and whatever.
Hmm.
Um and Furiosa starts like ramming some of the other cars that wind up like getting sucked up into the sand tornado or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that music, the filming, the cinematography, just like it's just that's where it's like a symphony I was saying where it's just like everything clicking at once. You've got these awesome visual shots, you've got this amazing music playing and just it's an epic moment that they captured so well. That's one of the best parts of the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The one of the other ones that I really like is the final car chase.
Hmm.
When they're on the way back to the Citadel, it's not the whole thing necessarily, but one part that gets really gets a lot of that great filming and cinematography and everything is when Mad Max gets on one of those man, I don't even know what you call it, the long poles that they were waving back and forth.
Yeah. Hmm.
The music gets really loud, really intense, and he's on one of those going back and forth, and they get a shot of him like going from one side to the other, and they look back behind him, and like a bunch of the cars are on fire and exploding and everything, and it's just like a really awesome shot, kind of from his perspective of everything, and you get to capture a lot of
Hmm.
what's happening. So that was another really good one that I just always remember.
Yeah, for sure. There's also the scene too where, oh, Nathan Jones's character dies.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
one, yeah, that one is a kind of a memorable one for me. Um, or like the truck flips over and then like it lands on him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh crap. Like, oh, that's how you get rid of the big guys. Have a semi tip over on him.
Yeah, and that's right after they kill Immortan Joe,
Yeah.
and that's a pretty. That's another thing too that we've talked about in the previous Mad Max movies, where they do a really awesome job, but then it's really anticlimactic.
Yeah.
And they did such a good job in this one.
Yeah, because what we talked about with Road Warrior, how if you could almost blink and miss Humongous getting killed.
Yeah,
Like, 'cause
and
I
that
think it had to like rewind and be like, wait, did he die? Was that him in that car? And like it was kind of almost like gray. I don't know. Like,
yeah. Well, and then
yeah, that took me a
also
little while to figure out that was he was in that car.
yeah, and Toe Cutter, um, died really quickly in the first one too.
Yeah.
So, and the third one was really disappointing because I mean, not saying that you wanted Tina Turner's character to die, but obviously Tina Turner's character was like the main antagonist and she didn't die. But then you had that little sidekick of hers and that was just goofy, weird and awkward.
Yeah.
So, but this one like also the interesting thing too that is so cool is this is the Mad Max movie and so much about Mad Max, right? Like just Mad Max rocked this movie. But at the same time, it was Furiosa who wound up killing Immortan Joe,
Yeah.
which I just thought that was cool because like the first time I watched it, of course, I'm thinking, it's Mad Max. Max is gonna be the guy. Max is gonna be the hero. He does that. That's what Max does. And
Hmm.
then Max basically did everything else. And then Furiosa was able to get like the kill shot and everything. And I was just like, you know what? That was really cool. And of course, like how he died was epic and just like, yeah, just another just level to this movie that just added so much to it.
Yeah. Yeah, so Max basically ran the full length of the field, and then Furiosa scored the touchdown on the goal line.
Yeah, right.
That's basically how it was. But yeah, well, it kind of just fit too, because they built her up as like a strong character, and it's called Mad Max Fury Road, but it was also like they're almost like dual lead characters.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, and I actually liked her character more than I did Max in this one. I mean, as cool as Max is, but I don't know, her character was just um more interesting, I guess.
Yeah, there was more depth to her character, and also her character had more range too.
Hmm.
Max in two Max 2 in Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome and this one uh have the character basically was summed up into like a very small basic concept. Like
Yeah.
there's not a lot it's not complex.
Well, you don't
Um
really know him.
yeah,
That's kind of
like
the point of him. He's a drifter, almost like the movie Shane. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
no.
Like he's just a drifter who shows up, and then you learn like little pieces about him to get a rough idea of what he is, but you still don't know a whole lot about him.
Yeah, but if anybody's seen the other movies, and of course the first one, you do have a little bit of the backstory, but at the same time, like it doesn't need to have that much detail. They definitely gave a lot more detail to Furiosa, and yeah, it is kind of interesting to think about where basically it's just like you could have a huge debate who is the main character,
Yeah.
Mad Max or Furiosa.
Yeah.
So where ironically enough in all the other ones, you know who the main character is. Absolutely, Mad Max, Mad Max, Mad Max, Mad Max.
Yeah. This one is like their Riggs and Murtaugh, to go back to that, because there was like two main characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and ironically enough, though, like in this one, you're not really set up. It's not a normal thing to think of like possibly Mad Max not being the main character.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, and honestly, probably because of that and how well it was and how well it was received, is why the Furiosa movie came out.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, sir. Um, Man, anything else to share, or do you want me to get into the trivia and facts?
I might have some things to add after you get through trivia and facts. I think you have them, but if
Okay.
not, I'm going to make sure to toss them in there to mention them.
Rock. So the first thing I got is the flame shooting guitarist was Australian artist slash musician Sean Hape, better known as Iota. In an interview on Vice in 2013, um, oh, I'm sorry, interview with a show called Vice that was created in 2013. He said the guitar weighed 132 pounds
Man,
and shot real gas powered flames,
what?
which he controlled using the whammy bar on the guitar.
Nice.
Yeah, 132-pound guitar. Yikes.
Gosh.
Over 80% of the effects seen in the film are actually practical, including stunts, makeup, and sets. The CGI was used sparingly, mainly to enhance the Namibian landscape, removing stunt rigging and for Furiosa's left arm. which is a prosthetic limb. Which I always say that like CGI is not so bad. It's just you have to use it to supplement
Hmm.
practical effects. Like you can't just completely get rid of practical effects. And movies like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake kind of showed that.
Yeah, do you want to know a little bit of a sad piece of information?
What
Furiosa went in the wrong direction with special effects.
did it? Ugh.
Yeah.
Wah wah.
Hmm.
Ugh. So the editor, her name is Margaret Sixel. She is actually married to George Miller. She had roughly 470 hours of footage to edit. Watching it
Gosh.
took 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
That'd be
Wow.
like
Yeah.
watching the entire run of The Simpsons.
Oh my god. So that is actually a little bit of the information that I had that I wanted to make sure you covered was that it was
Okay.
George Miller's wife.
Hmm.
Um and actually I have a little bit of extra information on that. Because you don't have anything more on that, right?
No.
Okay. The little extra that I have that I read in a story somewhere or something, it was like a little blip, so it's not like super in depth. But George Miller, like she's not normally either an editor by trade or um someone who edits action movies.
Okay.
One of those two situations. Like she was not normally doing this. And she asked and she was like, "Why do you want me to do this?" And I believe it was George Miller specifically, or somebody told her, "We want you to do it because then we know that it's not going to be the same as every other action movie."
Okay.
Because if you are normally an editor for an action movie, or if you specialize in that and everything, then you're going to do what's always been done. Like you're gonna put it together like everybody else has put it together. Like they wanted a unique result, so they wanted somebody who doesn't normally do it to give it a try.
Okay.
That
That
that's what
makes
I
sense.
heard. I can't remember where it came from. I wish I had the source, but that was something I heard shortly after I watched the movie the first time.
Rock. So counting the opening voiceovers and discounting any of the grunts, Max himself has exactly 52 lines of dialogue, which honestly seems like a lot because I
Hmm.
didn't think he had that many. So the older actresses playing the mothers or whatever, or
Okay.
the that like Furiosa got, um, they actually did their own stunts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang.
So according to the director, the film's storyboard was made even before the screenplay was. The reason behind it was because Miller envisioned the film as a continuous chase with little dialogue and more focus on visuals. The storyboard was made with a collaboration of 5 artists and had about 3,500 panels.
Dang.
Yeah. We mentioned this before, but this is the second movie that Hugh Keys-Byrne has been in the Mad Max series. He was Toe Cutter in the first one. He plays Immortan Joe in this one.
Hmm.
So Charlize Theron shaved her head for the role of Furiosa, and as a result, she had to wear a wig for her role in the movie A Million Ways to Die in the West,
Oh.
which is that Seth MacFarlane movie that no one saw. So after George Miller screened some footage at the SXSW Film Festival, director Robert Rodriguez stood up and asked, "How in the hell did you film that?" And if you're not familiar with Robert Rodriguez, he made like Mariachi and oh, what was it? From Dusk Till Dawn. Some of those movies he made, Planet Terror as well.
Oh, nice.
According to Tom Hardy, he had lunch with Mel Gibson to discuss him taking over the iconic role of Max. Gibson told him, "I'm just too old to effectively play Max," and he gave Hardy his blessing.
Why didn't he do more?
Why, Mel? That'd be the last thing
No.
I'd ask Mel why about, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, so the film used three identical war rigs, which is the main truck in the movie. They were based on a Czechoslovakian all-wheel drive military vehicle.
Hmm.
Yeah. This is the second sequel to receive an Academy Award nomination for Best Picture without any of its predecessors being nominated. The first movie was Toy Story 3.
Oh gosh.
George Miller directed Mad Max, the entire franchise, noted for its violence. Ironically, he is also director of three family-friendly films, which is the second Babe movie, Babe, Pig in a City, and both of the Happy Feet movies. That's pretty funny. It's about as different as like there's a director named Bob Clark. He directed A Christmas Story,
Okay.
but he also directed Black Christmas in a movie called Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. It's a zombie movie.
Oh my gosh. That's
But
funny.
so 150 cars were built for the film and only 15 of them survived.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So much carnage was in this. So, Armie Hammer, Jeremy Renner, Michael Fassbender, Joel Kinnaman, Heath Ledger, Eric Bana, and Eminem were all considered for the role of Max
Oh my
after
what?
George Miller like decided to recast Max and not use Mel again.
Yeah, probably a good idea with that one.
Yeah, I
All
could
right,
see
well
Jeremy
with
Renner doing it.
yeah.
Heath Ledger probably would have been great, but I mean, was he even alive at this point?
Ooh, when did
When did The Dark Knight come out? I don't remember. It was a lot earlier than
2008
yeah. So
is when he died.
yeah,
So, I mean, they must have been getting preparing for it in 2007 or 2008 because, like,
yeah,
I mean, when you think about it, with how long it took to edit or even just watch the film, 3 months. So, yeah, I can't imagine how long this project actually was.
yeah. So Nux, the name is derived from a Latin word meaning nut, or if translated figuratively, means a thing of no value.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah. And the last thing I got is this movie cost $150 million and it made 380 in the box office.
That is a good day.
Yeah. And grades. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, what are they?
I think I accidentally saw it as an 8.1.
It is an 8.1, yeah.
Okay. I did not see Rotten Tomatoes, so critic 95%.
You're close. It's 97.
Okay, nice. Highest rated Mad Max movie so far. Audience 90%.
86.
Oh,
I don't know if I've ever really talked to anybody that didn't really like this movie.
yeah, that's fair.
I guess I'll go first since I'm sure you'll have a lot more to say.
Rock.
I enjoy this movie. It's um it's got a lot of action in it and it's got some like kind of crazy visuals and that kind of stuff. So to me that's fun. It does come in at 2 hours, which is kind of right on that threshold there of maybe being a little bit too long, but it's for an action movie. But there's really not much wasted scenes in this, so I don't even know what they could really cut back. Um, while watching the Mad Max series, I've come to realize, like, uh, while I enjoy them, they're not something I'm gonna watch like a whole bunch of.
How dare you?
But, uh, this I can't really deny that like so many things of this movie were great. I ended up falling on a 4.5 out of 5. so I couldn't go the full 5 out of 5. But um, I'm sure yours is.
I am slightly disappointed.
You giving it a 6 out of 5?
No, slightly disappointed that you gave it 4.5 out of 5. Like that one hurts a little bit. So yeah, easily 5 out of 5 for me. This is easily a top five movie for me.
Right.
Um, out of like all movies, it just is. I don't. I want to find a different word than um masterpiece, because I feel like that's something that is just like perfect execution and is very artistic in its um form and function.
Yeah.
This one is very much still an action movie. It's not like deep dramatic um Oscar award winning. I mean, like, it had certain elements, absolutely, that were Oscar worthy, but it doesn't have that performance, that main actor or supporting actor or actress and things like that. Um, but for what is it, for the category of what it is as an action
Hmm.
movie and what it is trying to accomplish, I don't know of any other movie in that category that does it as well as this one does.
Rock.
Um, to briefly, as brief as possible, to summarize some of what we've already talked about, they make you care about the movie with as little effort as possible because they give you very direct information in a in short small bits of dialogue, and it is so much action but also like so much different action. Because even one thing that's very that was kind of cool that I noticed is like the first main car chase to the last main car chase, there were certain things and certain tactics that they were using that they didn't use the first time.
Hmm.
So they kept giving you new content instead of like regurgitating some of the same stuff, like in a lot of your 80s action movies where it's just like, oh, it's a this is a firefight, guys shooting guns and
Yeah.
explosions, and it's the same thing over and over again. This kept giving you something new and something different, which was really great and really awesome. But yeah, just everyone did a fantastic job. I think some of the elements that just help elevate it are the soundtrack is amazing, and the cinematography is fantastic. Like establishing shots, and also I didn't even mention there were a few things too where there were great camera tracks where they would follow some of the vehicles and go around from these just like a lot of the things that low budget or kind of like first time director movies get issues with is just like they get really stuck with really stagnant camera angles and things like that. And this one just went crazy with it, but it wasn't crazy obnoxious. It really recognized like, hey, we have an opportunity to do a cool camera shot here. Let's do it. And they did, and they were sprinkled throughout the whole thing and just added another element to it.
Hmm.
So just so many things working for it, and there's really nothing that I can share that works against it. I mean, unless you really want to go into the deep details of like scientifically would this even be possible and how would this happen, yada yada yada, which I don't care quite that much to have an argument about that. So yeah, easy 5 out of 5 for me. um One thing actually I forgot to mention during your facts and trivia, and I was going to mention it before I started my little final review. One little fun thing I have, you probably don't remember this name. It did not come up when you were talking about your the actors at the beginning of the movie or the
Yeah.
beginning of the episode, but Richard Norton. So
Oh
Richard,
yeah.
do you know where I'm going with this?
Oh, I know who Richard Norton is.
Okay. Well, Richard Norton is an Australian actor, and he was in another movie that we already have covered on the podcast. Do you remember that movie?
Probably some martial arts movie.
Jackie Chan and Mr. Nice Guy.
Yep. He was the bad guy, right?
Yep, he was the bad guy.
Yep. He was in lots of martial arts movies. I know I saw him in a few Cynthia Rothrock movies.
Okay.
Yeah. He always seems to play a bad guy.
hmm Yeah, so he was in it, and that was one of the I can't remember when I kind of came across that information, but I thought that was kind of interesting and just kind of cool. Where it seems like a lot of different Australian actors, like if they weren't in Fury Road, there was some connection with people in the Furiosa movie.
Yeah.
Um, but how I mean this, as we've already said in some of the previous episodes, like this is the iconic movie saga of Australia. And so if you are an Australian actor, you somehow want a connection to this movie series.
hmm
And so yeah, he was in it, and he was oh, what was his character's name? The Prime Imperator Imperator Imperator. I don't know, I'm probably
Okay.
butchering that. But he was basically one of Immortan Joe's like sidekicks
Oh,
or
okay.
bodyguards. When I knew he was in there, I recognized him when I was looking for him.
Okay.
So yeah, so I thought that was cool. I mean, Mr. Nice Guy, one of the first Jackie Chan movies I ever saw, and so always a favorite of that. So when I saw the connection between there, that was a pretty cool little detail.
Rock. Yeah, I didn't even notice. So good pull.
Yeah.
So we this is wrapping up our Mad Max month. So do you want to rank them? That's normally what we do. I know you
Yeah,
saw Furiosa. I haven't seen Furiosa, so I really can't talk about that.
yeah, no, we'll talk about
Um,
the Mad Max movies real quick, rank them in general, and then yeah, bonus content. Just a heads up, I will say, don't know exactly when, but I'm hoping that it will be immediately following this. I will do a bonus episode on Furiosa because I do have plenty to share with that. So if you have seen that, or if you haven't seen it and you aren't worried about spoilers, that will be coming out here soon.
Rock. So my rankings, I'll go from worst to first. Um, Beyond Thunderdome,
Okay.
I think was probably the clunkiest of the bunch. Then I'll go the original Mad Max, just because it had like that lull. It was about a half hour of not a lot happening. Then I'll go the Road Warrior, and then I'll go Fury Road.
Rock. That I'm looking. Yeah, that matches your rankings. So,
Rock.
I'm actually exactly the same. I mean, I think that it's kind of straightforward with that. Definitely, I mean, like somebody could have their own personal arguments about it, but it's very interesting because before Fury Road, the one that I would watch the most would be Beyond Thunderdome. But I think it's kind of one of those things where it's almost kind of got elements of an awesomely bad movie.
Yeah.
Definitely would not uh qualify it as that, but I feel like there are some of those elements, like because you had the stupid quirky things with the sidekick guy, and there were
Yeah.
dumb jokes and some stuff like that. But yeah, last in line, Thunderdome. After that, the original Mad Max. Great establishing movie, great foundation, but just did not pull as much weight as the other movies.
hmm
Mad Max 2 really helped set the stage for the Road Warrior and everything that was going to come after that. But Fury Road just easily head and shoulders above everything else. So,
I agree. So, now that we wrapped up Mad Max month, next month we are going to be covering all war movies. So, the movies we got planned next week is going to be Saving Private Ryan, which is a movie I watched not too long ago. And then 1917, which is a movie I haven't seen. Full Metal Jacket, which is a movie that I feel like most everybody's seen. And then wrapping up the month will be Platoon.
Rock.
Yeah. So even a decent variety of wars in that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'll be an interesting change in tone because pretty much every war movie is pretty serious. I mean, Full Metal Jacket's got some of its comedic elements in it, but all in all, serious movie.
Hmm.
But if you guys are liking the show, please subscribe and share. Um, Follow us on social media. We're on pretty much every platform. We got a fair amount of stuff on YouTube and on TikTok now, so go check those out as well. Uh, yeah, come by next time. We're going to be talking about Saving Private Ryan. But until then, as always, be kind and rewind.